Hello, you wonderful people. I am Justin. I'm also known as the Cinemaverick, and today I'm going to be talking about the, penultimate feature film, at least in my PT Ander-Thon, and that is a very well acclaimed movie from 2007, which garnered Anderson a lot of critical recognition. Definitely got some Oscar nominations. He was nominated for Best Film. He was nominated for Adapted Screenplay and Director. So really got him a lot of attention. And that film is, of course, There Will Be Blood. This was, of course, adapted from a novel by Upton Sinclair called Oil, though in interviews Anderson has said it's extremely loosely adapted from that. And he really went off and told his own story, but I think tried to retain some of the feel of the Upton Sinclair novel. And this film really has like a different tone than anything before this. So I'd say it probably bears the most similarity to his preceding film, Punch Drunk Love, in that it really is an investigation of this character and his psychoses. And it really tells the story of Daniel Plainview, who is a oil man. I don't know if you'd say an oil tycoon necessarily. He never achieves that level of wealth. He's sort of like, he is successful ultimately, but maybe not on the level of like a Rockefeller necessarily. And it's sort of about him acquiring his wealth and basically losing everything else in the process. It begins with him mining for silver, finding oil instead, and harnessing that and getting a little bit of success, and ultimately it's about his dealings in a place called Little Boston, California, where he makes a deal with the townspeople to drill there, and in the hopes of acquiring their land. So this is it's a period piece. Starts out in the very late 19th century, goes into the first part of the 20th century, and really is about this individual, the Daniel Day-Lewis character of Daniel Plainview. And I like I said, it is familiar if you've seen Punch Drunk Love. I wouldn't say this film is as surreal. It's more grounded. It's definitely more of a period piece. It looks fantastic. It was again shot by Robert Elswit, who is, from what we've seen from Anderson's filmography, probably one of the more versatile cinematographers, definitely. Just for what he's able to get. I mean, really, I think what I remember from this film in terms of the look is I remember the way the oil looks like some kind of alien substance. It just does not look good. It looks evil. And I remember like the shine off of that black substance. I also remember the sweat on the characters. A lot of these characters are that Daniel Plainview meets are in financial straits. They're desperate for something. They're looking for an answer, and we see that on their faces and the way they're shot. And I really do think this film, even though it is very much a film about oil production, ostensibly, it really is about, in some ways, Daniel Plainview's business dealings are really a symptom of how he's feeling in his own emotional and personal life. There's a huge part of this movie that is about the father-son dynamic, which should be very familiar for Anderson fans like myself, who remember Boogie Nights, the relationship between Jack Horner and Dirk Diggler, and then of course in Magnolia you have fathers and sons coming up a lot in various characters, particularly Earl Partridge and Frank T.J. Mackey characters, and seeing the grudge that they've formed. And so we really have seen that a lot, and I don't know what that... I think it's interesting to see it come up here, because unlike those other instances, this is maybe one of the tougher ones, because we see so much of it. We see so much of the relationship that is maybe not the most healthy, but there's some kind of feeling there that Daniel has for his son H.W. and to see how that plays out against the backdrop of this oil boom. we get a lot early on, and I gotta say, seeing it this time probably was the most. I think this was the most emotionally affecting time. This is the third time I've seen it, and yeah, just something about that relationship really does cut to the core. And it's not explicit exactly what's going on in their relationship. And I think Anderson has a lot of faith in his audience, which is, I think, something I've said about him already. He has a lot of faith in his audience in order to be able to say, okay, I'm not going to tell you what's going on between these characters. I'm going to just show you how they behave with one another. And, really, like, the Daniel Plainview character strikes me as someone he's always running from his problems, usually into his career. He uses his career as an escape from everything. I mean, we learn later on that he ran away from his family. He had a very strained relationship with his parents. We learned about there was some kind of relationship between him and his half brother. When that comes in, we see this new vulnerability that we haven't seen, and I think the relationship between him and the Henry Plainview character that we learn about is really interesting, because it really does show us for the first time a man who's almost willing to drop his guard and really get to the core. And we learn a little bit more about him in that really famous monologue that he has with his brother, where he talks about how he hates most people, and he has a competition in me. He's a competition in him. He wants no one else to succeed. And it really is, I think, the other component of his career, and that's not just an escape, but it's also an outlet for him, an outlet for his emotions, because of how guarded he keeps himself. I can imagine this film being very frustrating for a lot of people, because this character is so guarded and the film is so guarded, and you really have to really look and figure out what's going on with this character in certain moments. That's not always clear, and that can be frustrating. It can also be freeing, because it feels more natural. It feels like you're watching more of a human character. Maybe I can get into a little bit about Daniel Day-Lewis's acting here, which is what has not already been said about it, frankly. Yeah, it's a great performance. It's maybe my favorite from Daniel Day-Lewis that I've seen, and I have a bunch of favorites. I love him in My Left Foot. I love him in The Age of Innocence. Of course, Lincoln from 2 years ago. For some reason, this performance sticks out because it just seems like it catches you off guard. It's very disconcerting at first, because he is a character who's trying to sell this image of himself. I mean, he looks a lot like, it's pretty clear to me they modeled him a lot after John D. Rockefeller, right down to the mustache. Something about the very bristly mustache that reminds me of Rockefeller. But it's very much a performance. It's very much this character really committing to this certain image of himself. And what I love about him is how easily this character is rattled. I mean, we see early on when he's trying to strike a deal with the Sunday family, when Eli starts questioning him about the land, how much money they're going to get. He starts talking. He's rattled very easily, and he says, do you want to take it out of the ground? Do you know how much goes into that? And then, as a way of kind of shutting him down, and yeah, he's very susceptible. He's very he's cultivated this image of himself, but that image can break, which I think happens later on in the film, and really I think Anderson really uses the Eli Sunday character, played by Paul Dano, very effectively. It's an interesting performance, because I think it's also going to be I think a lot of people are going to bristle I think people bristled kind of when they saw it, or I know I did when I saw it initially, because I'm like, oh, this guy's, wow, Paul Dano's really being terrible. But is he being terrible, or is he just, considering he's playing a preacher, there's a way in which that is a performance as well. And so you have Paul Dano playing a pretty bad teacher that, it gets pretty funny once you have the Daniel Plainview character commenting on what Eli's doing, and yeah, Eli does actually get at him, particularly in the baptism scene that we see later on. He really does do a number on him. So I guess in all this rambling, I want to emphasize that this is a very human story. It's just very enigmatic, so it might not be apparently obvious, especially from a first-time viewing. The first time I saw this, I saw it when it first came out. I really didn't like it. I saw it a second time, and I felt like I was seeing it for the first time. So I would recommend, if you have seen this at one time, you weren't a big fan, maybe check it out. And yeah, it keeps you invested, I think, because the imagery is so stirring, and the character is so fascinating, even though he's not eminently likable. I think he has components of himself. There's so much about him that I think is relatable, if not apparently obvious. So that's sort of my take. It's definitely up there with Punch Drunk Love and Boogie Nights right now. Is one of my favorite films. I can't figure out which is better. But I don't know, we'll get into that maybe later on. So yeah, those are my thoughts on There'll Be Blood. I do want to say that I'm looking forward to the next movie, which I've seen already and was a big fan of, The Master. That will be next time, and I think after that will be Back Beyond, which is sort of a B-roll alternate takes for The Master. And then, you know what? I'll probably get to Inherent Vice after that, finally, which will be really cool. So, thank you for watching. I guess I went a little long in this video, but I hope you forgive me. And, yeah, I will see you soon. Take care.